everybody, good evening and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm your presenter, Stephenson, Worme, and we've got a pretty interesting and important subject matter that we'll be looking at today. And let me first introduce you, of course, to my guests here in studio this evening. And to my immediate left, it is someone, of course, who is not strange to the airwaves and not strange to TV or anything like that. And I'm referring, of course, to the Honorable Philip Telesford, who is, of course, the leader of government business in the lower house. He's got other portfolios, but you know what, we will leave that out tonight. And then to his immediate left, we've got Miss Marion Geiss, who is head of project German Development Corporation and Climate Resilient Water Sector in Grenada, which is shortly dubbed as GCREWS. And then to her left is a noble, handsome gentleman. He wouldn't blush for me introducing him in that way. And that's, of course, Mr. Terrence, who is the acting manager of NAWASA since November, I think, 2023. Lady, gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Good evening. So we're looking at water resources management and the regulation bill, and we have quite a great deal of things to discuss about here this evening. And first and foremost, Mr. Smith, of course, this is the first quarter, so to speak, of the dry season period. And we've been having a better shower so far. I'm sure you're delighted about that. How welcome is it? How welcoming is that?
Yes, we are. It was predicted. The regional weather body, Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, CIMH, they publish a prediction in late November, early December, I think it was, and they predicted that the first 3 months of the year, January, February, and March, would be wetter than normal, wetter than average. So that is what we're experiencing, and we hope it continues. I think shortly they'll be publishing the prediction for April and May, and we're hoping it will be similar. So we are thankful. We're getting there's quite a bit of rain today, and remembering that last year we had a severe, probably 1 in 16 year drought. So we're thankful for that.
Yeah, it's really happy news for you, and I'm sure that the rest of the nation as a whole would be very happy about that too.
Certainly.
So let's look at your position, of course, acting manager of NAWASA. One of the more important essentials here in Grenada services. That's a challenging task for you. How challenging is it?
It's very challenging, but it is rewarding. Remember, I was there before, many years ago. I'm a water engineer. I've been active in the field of water management for 4 decades. So by no means a spring chicken. I've been there, and it's my life, my passion. Challenging. We had a drought last year, 2024. We had a hurricane, and then we had extreme rainfall in November that actually did more damage to our water systems than did the hurricane on the 1st of July. So it's been challenging, but that's what I knew what I was getting into,
yes,
so to speak. Yeah.
Last year, May the 10th, I think it was, the Honorable Deacon Mitchell convened a meeting with the National Emergency Advisory Council and addressed the very urgent need to implement measures to conserve water resources here in Grenada. And the fact that we had such a severe drought last year, I think it's the worst we've had in 14 to 16 years.
Correct.
Let me ask you, Minister, did that sort of startle the government to push its way forward in ensuring we look at a very important bill?
Well, exactly, because it was in the making. The reality is that as a government, we consider all possible risks that the population faces. And of course, the shortage of water is indeed one of those risks that we have to contend with. And so, as a cabinet, we've been looking seriously as to what can be done to strengthen the management of water resources on the island. So this bill, of course, is very interesting and is something that has really grabbed our attention because of the necessity, the urgency in developing a comprehensive water management plan. And so the government indeed has put quite a lot into ensuring that there is, the legislation, the legislative framework in place so as to ensure that the scarce resource, as we know it, water, will be properly managed by one and all, and that the legislation actually helps to promote some measure of awareness for the entire population. And so it is extremely important that we consider the scarce resources and its management thereof rather seriously, because we recognize the change in conditions, weather patterns, and so on over the years. That has been something that has really been grabbing our attention. So it is something that we, as a small island state, is something that we must pay close attention to.
Ms. Geiss, elucidate us a little bit about the German Development Corporation and its whole association with GCREWS here in Grenada. Just amplify about that a little bit so that our audience would understand what you folk all about.
So before the Climate Resilient Water Sector in Grenada project, we already had a climate change or several climate change projects that we partnered with the government of Grenada. Back in 2013, actually, the corporation started with staff here on the island. And water has always been a topic in light of climate change. So with the International Climate Change Initiative of the German government, we started to have stakeholder consultation, work with the government and the different stakeholders, NGOs, businesses, and always water came up as the severe droughts and climate change and the change in precipitation. And we had smaller projects within the ICAS project, the Integrated Climate Change Adaptation Strategies project, and the Ministry of Environment at that time, where we looked with the tourism sector and so on, and what are water initiatives we could do. And within this whole consultation and also the discussion, there was we supported the government through our staff partners on the update of the water policy. Mr. Smith, at a time, a different capacity was vital also in informing that. The Integrated Water Resource Management Plan, the National Adaptation Plan, 2017, there's an update actually under the GCREWS project, also supported with other partners at the moment. And water was always a big topic, and that when we saw an opportunity arise to access money from the then newly Green Climate Fund, which was just set up by the United Nations, we supported developing a proposal, and then GIZ became accredited, and we saw an opportunity to implement it together. So I was very happy when this project finally got commissioned and started off by the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And immediately we discussed water resource management, which is a whole component of that 45 million euro project, 130 EC million. So, and one dedicated component is really on the water resource management, water governance, and setup of a water resource management. So I'm very happy that at this point now, this bill, which is crucial, is brought to legislation to the Parliament and the Upper House.
And in the early stage of your coming to Grenada, what was your overall assessment of the water situation and the whole climatic concerns here?
Grenada is very interesting. It has a lot of microclimates, right? So there is, in some areas and at certain times, you have a lot of water and rainfall, and at some you don't. Like GCREWS is a prime example where also you have challenges and had challenges for a long time. So it's not a one-fits-all solution. So really the GCREWS project is also designed as an integrated, we call it integrated solution. So you have different aspects, and really water sources, the climate resiliency of the water supply network is one big chunk of the money. A lot goes into water infrastructure and water supply, but even there we're looking at storage, we're looking at alternative ways to augment water also in terms of drought. So like water transfer project is a very innovative project we call the Seven Sister project. We're looking at groundwater well rehabilitation, we look at communal rainwater harvesting. Even with the health sector, we're collaborating to increase storage on the health sectors. We look also at digitalization, support to NAWASA, better operationalization, leakage reduction. There's much more. So, so it's really not just having one solution, but several solutions to really augment water supply and make it more climate resilient in that way, make Grenada more climate resilient in the freshwater sector.
Yeah, this of course is a tri-island state. You've got Grenada, of course, being the mainland, and of course the sister islands of GCREWS and Petit Martinique. What are the dynamics and the differences among these three islands, so to speak? One state, three islands.
Yes, I mean there are definitely differences. Like GCREWS depends a lot also on rainwater harvesting traditionally, and I think GCREWS has always demonstrated, actually is an example for Grenada of how you can capture rainwater harvesting and increase storage. So we can learn a lot from GCREWS because there is no rivers and streams in abundance like Grenada has, and Petit Martinique similar. So there are different challenges, and the GCREWS project is addressing the tri-island state as a whole. So of course legislation and the general encouragement in terms of governments applies to the whole state. But then, of course, we're also looking at equipping farmers, for example, the tourism sector with water conservation equipment, and that applies to GCREWS. Actually, the first farmer who profited from the Challenge Fund for Agriculture under the project and got irrigation equipment was in GCREWS. Unfortunately, then Hurricane Beryl hit, and the farmers who actually were part of the project in the beginning, they have to now be re-equipped with irrigation equipment and rainwater harvesting systems. But yeah, we see different challenges, and the project tries to cater for challenges.
Yeah. Minister will be talking much more, of course, as we delve deeper into the subject matter, but we're told that Jamaica and St. Lucia have seen the importance of setting legislations. Have you had any discussions with these two territories, and have you looked at their modules and see how Grenada can adapt to anything that they have?
Yes, indeed. We have had discussions with both islands, and of course, their model has been very instructive in the development of our own plans and policies, and assisted us in the drafting of the legislation. And so we learn from their experiences. And you see, as small island states, we have to understand that we must pay particular attention to all of these scarce resources. Now, rainwater harvesting, for example, is something that we must have on island in Grenada, not just in GCREWS and Petit Martinique, because we recognize that quite a lot of water is wasted on an annual basis when there is heavy rainfall and so on. What can we do to actually harness all of this water, or most of it? Do we build more catchment area set up across the nation to ensure that we capture as much as possible the potable water. What do we do as it relates to desalination? Yeah, so all of these questions has to be answered in the whole context of the management of this scarce resource.
I know we have been talking a lot, and I think the citizens of Grenada have been clamoring for better service. Well, of course, Mr. Smith from NAWASA over the years, and one of the complaints has been, well, we've been having so much rains, even when they're on seasonal rains, and they've been asking what has been happening with all that rainwater. What really is that the big challenge, or some of the big challenges we have in terms of capturing that and storage? So what has been the challenges?
The challenge is this: the rain falls in the watershed, the catchment, on roofs, on paved areas, impermeable structures. It goes to the nearest drain, to the nearest municipal drain, and it ends up in the sea. Now, that's what happens all over, right? The water that NAWASA captures, about 90%, fairly well-known fact of NAWASA's water supply, the source is surface water impoundments. So we build a dam or a weir or an impoundment across a perennial stream or river, create a little impoundment, and we pipe that water to a water treatment plant, treat it, distribute it. The problem is, so NAWASA has about 26 or 27 such surface water systems on mainland Grenada, of course. They supply for Carriacou and Petit Martinique being desalination. But our dams, the impoundments created by our dams are relatively small, of the order of 1 million gallons or 2 or 3 million gallons. So for a plant like the Annandale water treatment plant, which can treat in excess of 2 million gallons per day, right? An impoundment of 1.8 million or 2 million gallons is scarcely one day's supply. So what I'm getting at is that Grenada doesn't really have the topography, the geography for building large dams. Yeah, you're talking about dams that would store hundreds of millions of gallons, such as they exist in Trinidad and in Jamaica. St. Lucia, several years ago, built a kind of large dam. It was called initially the Roseau Dam, and then they named it after their former Prime Minister John Compton, the Compton Dam. And you may recall sometime around, it was about 2013, 2014, or 10, 11 years ago, there was the Christmas Eve rains, and it rained. The clouds just stayed over St. Lucia for 2 or 3 days. It wasn't a hurricane, was not tropical, anything. Yeah? And there was widespread damage, landslides, soil erosion, and so on. The dam was silted up. And it took them many years. In fact, I don't think they ever completed the clearing of that dam. So my point is, Grenada we don't really have the land mass, the size, the topography for large dams. Under the GCREWS project, there's a sub-component in which we're going to be building some check dams, so a small weir a few meters above a dam, so that it can trap the sediments and silt and rocks and boulders and trees and bamboo stools and so that now come and block our dams. We're improving the intake from several of the dams. So these are these are some measures that will improve the functioning of our dams. But what I would like to address our minds to is the roofs of residential homes, or all buildings for that fact in Grenada, the rainfalls, there's very limited rainwater harvesting on mainland Grenada currently. And we are now promoting, the project is promoting the mainstreaming of rainwater harvesting on mainland Grenada. So when you say, well, okay, or the average person says, rain falls, it runs off, what happens to the water? Why don't we as homeowners become involved, put in a rainwater harvesting system, put in a couple of tanks, a small pump system to, a small pump to pressurize your system, and for a relatively small, a few $1,000s, you can make yourself, it's called what is augmentation. So you're augmenting the public water supply. So at times of drought, or a problem with a treatment plant, or some emergency, or hurricane, or storm, or whatever, you will have increased resiliency to these vagaries of nature. So I'm putting in a major plug here now, probably not the response you expected. Rainwater harvesting is widely recognized internationally as a climate change adaptation measure, in particular for small island states.
Okay. Well, tell you what, we're going to talk a little bit about that more after the break. We'll just take this break now, and then we'll be right back.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Get so much more with Courts Ready Finance. Whether it's a furniture upgrade or appliance replacement, it's easy when you shop using Courts Ready Finance. Get more flexibility by choosing your payment terms, more affordability with low monthly payments, and more access with fast and easy application. Plus, there's no down payment and you make your first payment in 30 days. Get great deals and gifts with select purchase. Get so much more with Courts Ready Finance. Only at Courts. Bringing value home. Special conditions apply.
And welcome back. Well, Mr. Smith, we were talking about the whole importance of rainwater harvesting. We're going to be looking at the bill and certain aspects of the bill shortly. But let's see if we can just take maybe about a minute or two and amplify on that. I think the people in Carrigo and Petit Martinique understand a bit about catching rain, so to speak. In Grenada, we say we've got enough rain. We don't necessarily need that. But I think in recent times, a lot of people are changing that concept, and they're beginning to think we need to take initiative and get something done ourselves in terms of water catchment and conservation. What would be your further encouragement?
Well, There are some very good examples. There are a couple of hotels in the south of the island that practice rainwater harvesting that did not have any problems in last year's drought. There are several households in Grenada that practice rainwater harvesting that did not have a problem. Yeah, so we are engaging in some initiatives. It will be rolled out and hopefully in the coming months to lobby the government to take some fiscal incentive measures to make the components of rainwater harvesting more affordable for the average Grenadian.
Okay. Just quickly tell us, Marion, rainwater harvesting, is it done in Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up, for me it was almost alien not to see that every house doesn't have a rainwater harvesting.
Really?
Because I grew up and always watered the plants with the rainwater harvesting. It's really integrated into when you have a house. So for me, seeing all these lush gardens here and people washing their cars, and so that's like a natural you can do with rainwater harvesting. And it's one side is the financial part. You can save really on your bill and the water bill. Of course, a lot of people don't do the math. We always don't do that. But it's also just the access, because if you have one rainfall, even if it's a dry spell, but you have one good rainfall, it just fills up your system again. And with the Challenge Fund for Tourism, for example, and we talked to some of the hotel business, we did water audits with quite a few hotels, and it was prior to COVID, and then COVID hit, which posed a different challenge. But the hotels that implemented, they were really see it as a game changer.
Well, let's talk about what do you do with this harvested rainwater, so to speak. Some people might be concerned about the whole purification. What could be used besides maybe the irrigation and other things, the drinking of it? I would suspect that there need to be some sort of purification. What advice would you have for people out there, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, okay, so there are various approaches could be taken. The first one I'd mention is that it's not used widely in Carriacou traditionally. Is what is referred to as a first flush diverter. It's just a little mechanism involving half a length of PVC pipe and two fittings on either end, and the ball that is used in a toilet tank, the traditional little 6-inch spherical little plastic ball that floats up and down in a column, in a PVC pipe column of water. That ensures that what is referred to as the first foul flush, the first couple of minutes of rain that would wash off the dust and the grit and lizard droppings and bird droppings and so forth. There may be rat feces and so on. Washes them down, and they can be sent to waste. You can open a valve and it would go to waste. Right. And so that first foul flush is trapped within the first flush diverter, and that first foul flush does not enter your tank. Now, there's a fair amount of misconceptions. You can store clean water in a tank provided it is covered, so that insects, birds, mosquitoes, lizards, right down to vermin cannot enter it. That water, clean water, fresh water, can last for months, without becoming bad for human use. But as a precaution, we advise that, and of course you can use the chlorine tablets. You can use household bleach as long as it's not perfumed. So they're measures that are widely disseminated, right? That you can periodically use to disinfect that water.
Okay.
But even if you don't, if you have a first flush diverter, right? You can use that water for bathing, for flushing toilets, for washing clothes, and the water like that you use, let us say, for brushing your teeth, that you can ingest, and certainly water for drinking. You simply boil the water, put it to cool in a jug overnight. You put it in the fridge, or if you want to use it room temperature. Very, very simple method. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is very simple and straightforward and traditional. Nowadays, for those who can afford it, they are under the counter or under the sink, they refer to. Little portable, basically little treatment plants, right, that are not terribly expensive, reverse osmosis and microfilters and so on. So there's a range of techniques that can be deployed, but the simplest is a first flush diverter. Ensure your tank is covered, and boil drinking water.
Okay. Now, so let's look Water Resources Management and Regulation Bill. This bill seeks to provide an institutional framework for the sustainable management, conservation, controlled allocation, development, use, and regulation of the water resources in the state of Grenada by establishing the National Water Resource Management Unit to manage the water resources of the state. Now, the bill contains 6 parts, 56 clauses, quite a bit, I dare say. Minister, what's the overall goal of this bill?
Well, the overall goal is to ensure that the resource is properly managed, and in the event of shortage of water, that householders, for example, would be given priority, that there is a master plan that surrounds the development, the management, the allocation, and use of water in the country, and to ensure that there is proper management structure that involves the management unit, and also a licensing authority that would ensure that people who use water on a commercial scale, whose business is in the development and bottling of water and so on, that they would of course be gotten a license to apply their trade, and that in the event of any sort of dispute or problems, that there is a go-to body that can independently look at that, and by and large just to remove the management of the water resource from that of NAWASA and allow them to continue to focus on the servicing, the service provision of water, and so that the unit itself would be predominantly responsible for managing the resource, advising the minister on strategies for conservation, for development of the resource, and for identifying new policies that can be applied in the context of the overall management. So in a nutshell, that is what we're trying to do, to ensure that there is a long-term plan, long-term strategy towards the management of the resource, and to ensure that those whose business is in that of providing a water service, water and sewage service, is not the same people who are going to be actually responsible for the management of the resource. So it's just creating some measure of a governance structure that ensures that there is some measure of independence, and that everybody can have proper and good access to the limited resource.
So nobody is going to be yelling at NAWASA now after this, after all. NAWASA has gotten quite a bit of beating. The unit now will be the one sought after.
Well, not exactly, because NAWASA is into the service business.
Yes.
And so if they're providing a service, of course, how they provide that service to the general public, all of that will remain. But in terms of of the overall strategy for the management of the resource, that is removed from NAWASA. And so the services that of NAWASA, they continue to provide water for general consumption by way of the pipes and storage facilities and all of that. But in terms of the strategy, how do we manage our resource? How do we develop a long-term plan to tackle possible shortage of water? How do we apply those strategies? All of that is centered around the water resource management unit.
So in a sense, is it less burden to NAWASA or not really?
Well, less in a sense, but NAWASA has been doing that for quite some years. There is a unit in NAWASA that is presently doing that. But with this new legislation, that is now removed from NAWASA so that they focus on extraction and management, extraction and service provision to the general public.
Where does climate change come into all of this? Because it seems to me all over the world, people are now stampeding, so to speak, because of this climate change situation that seems to be harassing the entire world. Now, how has it, Marion, affected us here in Grenada, climate change, and what are some of those things that could be done with specific reference to the bill, for example, to alleviate and to combat this climate change that we have?
Yeah, so Grenada is, as a small island state, is particularly vulnerable to climate change. And the whole Caribbean, we have actually quite an interest with this project and also with the Water Resource Management and Regulation Bill and the Water Resource Management Unit, where other countries like St. Kitts, they are conceptualizing at the moment a similar project. They're actually planning to come to Grenada to learn from Grenada on these activities, learn from NAWASA, learn on the water resource management. So not only do we look at Jamaica and St. Lucia, and also St. Lucia, we have a dialogue where they also learning because they have actually chosen a different model. And I remember also the heads of CARICOM meeting in September last year, the year before last year. We already had questions also from Barbados and so on how this whole water resource management unit will be set up. And so we have all eyes on us, and that just shows how many of the other islands in the region facing the same challenges. So, we've seen it last year, we have seen it with the drought, we've seen it with the hurricane, and we have seen it with the flooding. And these are things, unfortunately, with climate change, we are most likely seeing more frequently and more severe in the future. So it's not just every 50 years, it's probably every 20, every 10, and maybe even more often that we see very severe tropical storms. Heavy flooding is already something that quite occurs quite frequently. And when we had the drought, we know this was no surprise to us that this happens, and this will happen again. So the water resource management and the legislation and the unit is basically there. For example, let's take the farmers, right? So the farmers have their business. The food security depends on a supply of water, especially during when they're planting and before harvesting. And without measures and concrete planning, data that we know, okay, we're collecting data, we're working actually with the Meteorological Office and Ministry of Agriculture to look at like the data patterns and weather patterns and so on, so make informed decisions. The Water Resource Management Unit will work a lot with data in the future, so to inform where the how can we do proper watershed management, which water resources do we need to safeguard, and how can we maybe give incentives of what Mr. Smith earlier says. For farmers, for example, rainwater harvesting should be a go-to. Because even if you have a little spring, you don't know. If you have like long droughts and drought spells, your spring might dry out and you can't take anything out of the river in the near future. And how we can ensure that food security depends on the water supply. So to plan ahead, to have a master plan, as Minister said, you need the resources and the right people to actually make that their business. And NAWASA's business is now clear with the water supply and the water resource. And still there will be data and information flowing from NAWASA to the Water Resource Management Unit, so because there's an expertise. But the Water Resource Management Unit will be really leading and guiding and deciding and informing the government via Minister in critical decisions, especially when it comes to crisis.
Obviously, there are two issues I'd like to look at. Let's first look at the educational aspect of it, and then we're going to look at the financial aspect of it. Obviously, our country needs to be educated about these changes that must take place, the challenges that we have on hand. What should we do? What can be done to ensure that our nationals are well educated about climate change, about the water production situation in Grenada, water conservation, water catchment? What are some of the things that can be done just to help educate the nation? We start with you, Minister, then I'll go to you, Mr. Smith. I'll give you 30 seconds.
Right. Well, as you're asking this question, I remember as a youth growing up, there was an ad by NAWASA that says, water a precious commodity, don't waste it, with a convent girl turning off the water. In those days, we had standpipe and so on. That's a catchy way of educating the public. But I believe it's something that has to be done throughout the school system, throughout our communities, ensuring that people are aware that we need to conserve water. We need not just to conserve, but also to avoid the contamination of our water sources. People, might be doing the gardening just using chemicals or throwing garbage and all sorts of things without considering what is happening downstream. So you're doing something upstream, you're thinking, well, it could be maybe a pig farm or whatever, and way upstream, and you're saying, well, I'm in the bush, I'm not affecting anybody, but this is soaking through the soil, and sooner or later it's going to get into the waterways. So how do we approach all of this? It has to be education across the board. Our farmers, our housewives, talking about rainwater harvesting, our children at school, so that we grow with that conservation mindset that water indeed is a scarce resource. We're living on an island. We cannot cross or walk across a border to get water from another country. So we have to find ways to be able to conserve this limited resource. And this has to be tackled. One of the ways of doing it is through the schools and other systems of education.
Mr. Smith, 30 seconds, education.
Right next door to GBN, where we are now, is NAWASA's headquarters on Lucas Street. And there's a little concrete security, probably 10 by 8, a little security booth right at the entrance. I don't know if you passed along Lucas Street recently. There's a mural painted on the face of the building facing Lucas Street. And we recently set up, still to finalize it, but we recently set up a rainwater harvesting model using the concrete roof of that little building.
Yeah.
And our communications unit would be leading the charge on that. We're going to be setting up a program in the coming months, in this 2025, where we bring students, school children, whether it's primary school to secondary school or whomever, to do a little educational visit. We will demonstrate. We have a first flush diverter. We have a little pump. We have a return line with a little shower head to simulate rainfall.
Yeah.
And we will have, signage and a little diagram and so. And that is going to be used. So if you educate school children, they will go home and tell their parents about what they learned, and what better way to spread the word and educate our population. So that is a direct contribution that NAWASA would be making, basically to be spreading the word about mainstreaming of rainwater harvesting. 30 seconds.
Ms. Geiss, 30.
I can speak of what we're doing,
yes.
Because Mr. Smith mentioned it, school children. So the last few national science fairs, we work with Ministry of Education, and working through the schools, all 100 schools in Grenada, Carriacou. We have been working with the different teachers and supported a national science fair and the district science fairs before, and a lot of the projects actually dealing also with water. And we've seen rainwater harvesting system built by primary, secondary year school student who did a really good job in understanding how it works. So really applying that knowledge and translating that. But also in the GCREWS project, we have an awareness campaign. So we work across with a great communication team from NAWASA, from the ministry, from Grenada Development Bank, GIZ, and so on, Ministry of Agriculture, where we discuss what could be interesting campaigns, and we work with PR agencies and really creative people in Grenada which come up with really good creative ways and ideas. And just to conclude to that, because one thing I learned in Grenada is nothing better than go to the communities and talk to the people. So we also worked with Caritas YAC in a program called the Grenada Water Ambassador Program, where we trained 20 young people and went with really work with 6, where we engaged them a bit more long term, and they went into 3 communities where they looked where the most vulnerable are, and we supported in installing storage and rainwater harvesting in these communities like Crochou, Jean-Enclave, and up in St. Patrick's, Mount Craven. So where we really looked what are the communities themselves thinking what is needed, people who were challenged by economically and so on. They will then install a system by the young people who were trained on the job to do that. So, and that is really, I think, a most impactful way of engaging and
great.
That.
And of course, with all of this, monies are involved. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick break now, and we're going to talk about the financial challenges involved. We'll be right back.
Have you heard about the new soft weave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Soft Weave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Soft Weave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Get so much more with Quartz Ready Finance, whether it's a furniture upgrade or appliance replacement. It's easy when you shop using Quartz Ready Finance. Get more flexibility by choosing your payment terms, more affordability with low monthly payments, and more access with fast and easy application. Plus, there's no down payment and you make your first payment in 30 days. Get great deals and gifts with select purchase. Get so much more with Quartz Ready Finance, only at Quartz. Bringing value home. Special conditions apply.
and welcome back. A little later on in the program, we will in fact open up the lines so that callers can make contributions and ask, of course, of our panelists here. So let's just, we talked about education just before the break, and with all of these initiatives and changes that would be made, of course, inclusive within the bill, it's going to be a costly affair, won't it? Where are we getting these monies from? Is it from Germany? Or what financial allocations are there, Minister? I'm teasing Marion.
Well, from the local context, you know, our budget here nationally, we continue to make our regular allocations as per our budget. In the context of building larger systems and so, NAWASA, of course, as a statutory body, has to do what it needs to do to fight its expansion. And of course, via the GIZ project, there is some resources that can be tapped into. So I
does Marion care to delve into it, or it's something of a bit of a secret? No, you would not.
Secret.
Right, so she wouldn't disclose that.
So that's what it is. I mean, if government policy is to expand water resources, but generally, how do we go about this? When we talk about rainwater harvesting, for example, the government can do tax concessions for our local people to, if they have to invest in rainwater harvesting systems for their homes, and those who have businesses who wish to tap into their large roofs and to construct water harvesting systems. Of course, government can provide incentives. So that is one easy way of tackling rainwater harvesting. And any other commitment that government has to make to expand water treatment and the management of the resource, we just do what we have to do.
Okay, so let's think about times of drought, and I know that we're putting things in place to deal with it, but when we do have severe drought situation and the water situation is impacted negatively, who gets the priority here?
Well, of course.
We have hotels, we have domestic users. Who does?
Well, of course, the domestic users get first priority because, of course, as a basic human right, the average individual has to be served first. But generally, you know, it's a matter of management. How do you balance the distribution of water in those very difficult times? Because whether you operate a hotel or you have a private home or supermarket or whatever business you operate, you need water, whether it's to treat with your bathroom facilities or for drinking purposes. We have to be able to balance so that the population can be adequately served with water, because it is a fundamental human right.
Mr. Smith, desalination plants, they're very expensive mechanisms and things that we should look at? Or is it necessary in Grenada?
The first part of your question, yes, it is the most costly method of producing municipal drinking water. Now, is it necessary? It's essential for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Why? Because as mentioned earlier tonight, there are no perennial streams or rivers. There's no significant exploitable yields of groundwater. So yes, I should note though that the plants in Carriacou and Petit Martinique are allied with solar PV, solar electricity generation, because they are very, very high electricity consumers, the desal technology. For Grenada, I would strongly contend that we are not there as yet. Now, NAWASA over the years has recommended to particularly hotels that tend to be on the south of the island which is the driest part of the island, which is at the extremity of the Annandale water treatment plant, that is the main source of supply to southern St. George. We have recommended, and still do, that they try to augment again the municipal supply by putting in their own desal plant and also engaging in rainwater harvesting. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few hotels in Grenada that practice rainwater harvesting in a scientific manner.
And how have they been doing? How have they been doing?
Yeah, they did not have any significant adverse impact from the drought last year. That's the point I'm making. So for the tourism sector, certain types of businesses that may be high consumers of water, it would be in their interest to invest in desal plant, at least to augment to a certain degree, to a certain percentage, the municipal NAWASA supply. So rainwater harvesting coupled with desalination. We are not at the stage as yet where NAWASA should be considering, in my professional opinion, getting into desalination for municipal water supply on mainland Grenada. We're not there yet. One of the measures, if I may just expand a bit, one of the measures that NAWASA is embarking on now is a collaboration with a regional entity, the CDF, CARICOM Development Fund. And you can say, in a sense, the project cycle for this project started 2 weeks ago. And we're meeting with a delegation from the CDF on Wednesday, day after tomorrow. A couple of them are coming here. And this is for development of a project to improve the management of our watersheds. Yeah, so focusing on our at-risk watersheds. And we are going to be developing with the CARICOM Development Fund. They are also, like GIZ, accredited to the Green Climate Fund. Their limit is $10 million US, and we are going to be developing over the next few months a $10 million US project to go to the Green Climate Fund for grant financing, not a loan, for grant financing, to take a suite of measures from slope stabilization right up to reforestation to improve the health of our watersheds. Now, just a little factoid. Our production and quality department produced some data that we just finished analyzing into information. And do you know that the November, what I call the November extreme rainfall events, there were 3 or 4 days into nights where there was extensive rainfall. Do you know that there were 113 instances of blocked dams, broken raw water lines from about 10 or 12 of our surface water treatment plants? Not only in November, but for the second half, for the second 2 quarters of 2024. So from July, the hurricane, to December, 113 instances. So NAWASA, we are just hemorrhaging, literally, I mean figuratively, extensive expenditure because when your dam is blocked, right, you can't send a drone to clear it, you can't send equipment to clear it, most of them are inaccessible. You have to hire manpower, and this is done manually. When a 6-inch or 8-inch raw water main is broken, you need to send men out there and repair the pipeline. 113 times for the second half of last year. The project that I'm talking about for improved watershed management, over time is going to take several years, right? By reforesting the at-risk forests, watershed catchments, it would improve the health of the catchment, and it means that when we have these extreme rainfall events, you would not have erosion and siltation and landslides and tree falls as we do now, as has been happening for many years. Why? Because we as a society have not been investing in improving the health and improving the management of our watersheds. So that is what we have to be doing in the future for decades going forward.
Okay, we don't have much time remaining, but as usual, we like to open up the line and give callers an opportunity to ask questions and to give comments. So we're going to be opening up the line, and the number to call 440-1252, 440-1252. So the line is open now. If you'd like to call and ask a question of the panelists that we've got here, I'm sure that they're competent and they'll be quite willing and able to answer you. 440-1252. We've got a call on the line. Caller, good evening. Good evening, caller. Go right ahead.
Good night, gentlemen. Direct to NAWASA. Mr. Husband is there tonight?
No, Mr. Husband.
I told Mr. Husband a time a few years ago concerning spring water from Tantin to Paddock. I give that advice what to do, put some tanks above Tantin drain. And tell me that's not important. Ask them how long springs in Grenada run into the sea and they never top it. Talk about rainwater today. All the water in the spring going to the sea for years, and I was never do nothing. Never pipe in Paddock. Mr. Gary had it in the gardens in the years gone by to water the gardens. But the pipe got broken, and the big water running through the pipe. By Mr. Wilshire in Paddock, they go in by Ake Bowser. 14 years now. I told Mr. Hosmer about the radio program. I told him if I have to deal to do here, I put him in jail for life. Because he ain't ready for what I was saying. What thank you, he's joking. What thank you, that wasted with spring. River going down to the sea from Sendan River to Paradise River. Check out River going on the sea. From Paradise back to the eastern coast, coming back to St. George's. How much water going to the sea? What are you doing for the years gone by? Nothing. 5 bucks of months and months and months. Now was days and days and days and weeks and weeks and water ain't come and repaid.
Okay.
Come on now, sir.
Thanks a lot. So he was talking about so much water going down to the sea. That's where water goes anyway.
Yeah, well, springs are included in water resources. My response to the caller is NAWASA has tapped for many years up to the present. There are several springs that augment. There may be a spring that augments surface water dam and impoundment. There are several springs that are included in NAWASA's water treatment sources, and the functioning and growth and sustainability water resources management unit, that is going to be one of the areas of their responsibility.
Okay.
Right? They'd be mapping all of the various water sources and assisting the water service provider in improving our use of the water resource.
Okay, great. We've got another caller on the line. Caller, good evening. Welcome. Go ahead, caller. Caller, you there? Okay, well, we must have...
yes, I'm live.
Yes, you go right ahead. You are live.
Hello, I'm live.
You are live, sir. Go right ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yes. I have a serious question to ask. I have an example to really somebody to think about. I have my grandfather who is 84 years of age. Somehow he couldn't pay his bill, which is $20-something, all right? He got cut off, and I wanted to pay back that bill to put back the water. Now I realize that he has to pay $80 for reconnection fee. Also, he has to pay $250-something service charge, which would cost him like $400 to put back the water. He's an old person. He's the poor person. I would realize that the poor class of people would have to do that. Who would be getting the water cut off. How come? I mean, $250 for service fee for a person who cannot pay the bill for $22 or $21 a month. They cannot afford to pay it. NAWASA would have to realize that the poor set of people would be feeling the grip and the bite. I don't know who could do something about that, but I think it's not fair that a person who cannot pay the bill for $23 would have to pay $250 for service fee and $80-something for re-putting the water, for putting back the water. I think it's ridiculous, and I think someone should do something about it, because most of the time it's the poor set of people that cannot pay the bill that would have the water cut out, not the people with the money. So I would like to know what could be done about that $250 that would have to be for service fee, especially what would be service fee to open the pipe, to go back there and open the pipe, to go back there and take the key of the lock.
Okay, caller, I think we got your general gist of your concern. Thank you so much. Yeah, Mr. Smith.
Well, that is an operational financial issue. I would suggest to that customer to come in and speak with our finance / customer service staff and see if a payment arrangement could be negotiated, could be worked out, so that a period of time is given to defray this. The $250 is actually $240. That is part of the NAWASA regulations that have been there since 1990, for the last 34 years since NAWASA was created. It just happens that NAWASA had not been enforcing. That is a refundable deposit, similar to other utilities or other water service providers all over the world. I'm not denying it may be harsh or hard on a particular individual, so my recommendation would be to come into NAWASA Finance customer service personnel and try to work out a payment arrangement.
Okay, we do have another call on the line. Caller, good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. Go ahead, caller. Good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. Okay, that sounds a little bit distorted. Okay. I just want to ask here, because somebody has asked me to ask this question: how does the Water Resource Management and Regulation Act affect landowners' right to water abstraction? So that's a question that somebody asked me to ask Minister. So could we address it, please?
Well, it's very simple. If you are an average householder, user, farmer, subsistence farmer that is, utilizing the resource, then you continue as normal, except for you manage your resources. We expect people to manage properly and not contaminate the waterways and so on. But in the commercial users of the water, for example, if you have a water plant, that's your business. You're selling water. It's your land. We expect you to apply for a license with the unit and get your license to apply your trade. And that is not something that is strange. It is something that is pretty normal, and the licensing fee is very minimal. It's not anything that is exorbitant, but it's all in the context of ensuring that the resource is properly managed. The unit has a responsibility to plan and to manage the resource and to ensure that there is proper administration surrounding the governance of the entire system.
All right, we've got another call on the line. Caller, good evening. Thanks for holding.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Mr. Smith mentioned a while ago that they are thinking of they would like consumers to use their own devices. It's several years now. I have a big drum here collecting water from my roof. Some years ago, I noticed that during the dry season, only insects were coming through. I called NAWASA and asked them to help. They came, they looked at it, they took a sample, and it's about 5 years now I haven't heard from them. I'd love some help.
Okay, call, but did you?
Because that would be a good way of saving water, using resources voices from a roof, and I'm sure there are lots of other people who would like the same. So I'm just asking if you could develop better facilities for consumers who would like to use their own.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, well, my recommendation to that consumer would be to get a bit of netting, either wire netting or cotton or whatever, and fix it over that drum and tie it around so that insects cannot get in.
Okay.
The Ministry of Health probably, if I understood the caller correctly, might have been the better entity to go to rather than NAWASA. NAWASA is a municipal water service provider in that case. Yeah, so yeah, just some netting. You need to prevent insects, right, or any lizards or birds or whatever from getting at your source of water.
Okay. We did talk a little bit just a while ago about abstraction. What about the obtaining of abstraction license? How is that done?
Yeah, well, the person would simply have to visit the unit and get a form, fill it up, apply, and of course there would be a small fee that would have to be paid and so on. It's very normal as any other license. Yeah.
You say small fee for some Grenadians.
I'm not sure exactly how much that's going to be, but as part of the statutory rules and orders, that regulation is going to be published at some point in time so that people would know exactly how much the license fee is going to be.
Yeah. Could you just recount, really, NAWASA's responsibilities now on this new arrangement, new bill? Just in synopsis, give us some information there.
NAWASA's responsibility, yes, well, to supply water and to, of course, provide the best possible customer service to the general public. The management of the resource is not what, I mean, they manage their facilities, all right? But in terms of the planning and the collection of data and analyzing and policy frameworking and all of that, that is now in the hands of the Water Resource Management Unit.
Yeah. Mr. Smith, I know you've had a lot of talking to do tonight. I was at a funeral this afternoon and a gentleman yelled at me and I had to divert my attention from the funeral, and he sounded he needed to speak to me desperately. Then said to me, look, you're going to be on the show tonight, and so I want you to convey this, that there are quite a bit of wastage of water there. Pipelines burst and sometimes for long periods, and nobody from NAWASA. And what would you say would be the responsibilities of nationals, Grenadians? You see a pipeline burst, you see that there is some deformity, whatever the case is. What are the responsibilities of the citizens of the country? Should it just be, well, like NAWASA business, or should we all play an active role?
No, not at all. I think the latter. It's the responsible civic thing to do would be to report it promptly. But let me add, you have many customers who have leaks on their own property. And similarly, it's their responsibility to get a plumber, their own plumber, and have these leaks repaired.
Okay.
It is NAWASA's responsibility as the municipal service provider to repair its leaks. But it is just a reality of where we are as a nation, development of our water system. Many of our pipelines in the ground are 60, 70, 80, in some cases 90 years old. The useful economic life of a ductile iron pipe is probably closer to 45 to 50 years. So meaning that a not insignificant proportion of our distribution network has exceeded its useful economic life, and therefore it leaks. We did an analysis last year, and our non-revenue water level is at 24%. And the vast majority of that is from leaks in our own distribution network.
Okay.
So it is part of NAWASA's responsibility. So we can't deny it. It is our responsibility to repair the leaks, and it is the civic duty of a citizen of Grenada to report to NAWASA. We may not always respond to it as promptly as we should. That is a work in progress, and it is our responsibility through planning and training and proper supervision and supervisory management and the whole gamut. It is part of our responsibility to do better, and that is what we are aiming to do.
Well done. We do have a call on the line. Caller, good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. Thanks for holding.
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen, and to the lady also.
Good evening.
I'm calling from Terrence. You hear me?
Yes, welcome, Carrico.
Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm calling from Terrence, and rainwater harvesting has been, this is cultural, because ever since I know myself, we've been harvesting rainwater, whether it's in drums. But now we get a little bit more advanced these days, so we're building. So our system been building a long time now. And also we have black tanks. What I'd like to see the government do is to probably reduce the taxes on the black tank, especially where Barry will come and take out a lot of people black tanks in what they've been harvesting the water with. Although we get a lot, but there are some people without black tanks still. So if we could get a little reduction on the taxes, that would help a lot. And what we normally do is around this time is it's dry season stepping in now. So what we normally do is we turn down our valves so that you will get less water coming through the pipe. So in that way, you will save a lot of water. You conserve one. You would have water probably for next dry season if instead the rain don't fall. What I did a couple of years ago, instead of buying a car, I went and I invested in building another tank. So now I have to tanks. Even if the rain don't fall for a year or two, I have enough water to carry me through, and I don't have any problem. And really, I don't really depend on NAWASA. Although there's a system up here, but
all right.
I don't.
And maybe it's a good opportunity, caller, for you to spread your knowledge to others and what has been working for you. You probably could just share that with others. I'm sure it will be very much welcome. Thanks a lot for your contribution. We appreciate it. Yes. What about the water rate? Could we expect higher water rates because of this new bill?
I would leave that for Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is a statutory body.
Yes, that's a very good question.
Yep.
It is not necessarily the case. Now, Pastor Worme, you alluded a little earlier to cost of running things. Mm-hmm. And what you didn't directly ask is the Water Resources Management Unit is going to cost money to run. It's a small unit. It was designed to be about 9 or 10. The suggestion is it's going to start with about 5 staff members.
Okay.
But it's going to cost money to run. You have to pay salaries. It is going to be housed under the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, the PERC. Yeah. So they're going to have to make a contribution towards their upkeep. Mm-hmm. They're going to have, computer equipment, software and hardware, and equipment to measure, stream flow and stream gauging and so. Scientific equipment for data collection and data processing and so forth. What hasn't been mentioned, and I don't have a problem in mentioning it, who is the single largest user of raw water or water resources in Grenada? NAWASA. So NAWASA also is going to have to apply to the Water Resources Management Unit and pay for an abstraction license. And there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be fearful about that. That is how it is in many countries in the world. Okay. First world, second world, developing countries, up and down the deck. Yeah. So that is another thing that needs to be, to be ventilated. So the Water Resources Unit is going to be housed administratively under the PERC. But another element of this legislation that we haven't really dwelt too much on is that PERC, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, is also going to be regulating NAWASA as a service provider. So the responsibility for the setting of water rates would no longer be the responsibility of NAWASA. Now, while I say that, NAWASA doesn't set its own water rates. NAWASA makes recommendations to its minister, line minister, Minister of Public Utilities, and the minister will take it to cabinet. So it's the cabinet of the government of Grenada that has set water rates. But there is a more efficient and a more transparent and a more modern way of doing that, and that is having a regulator, which previously regulated only the electricity sector, would now be regulating also the water sector. So NAWASA, we would have to do our tariff studies and so still, and we would go to the utility regulator, the PERC in our case, to make a case for a rate increase. Now that said, we're now at this juncture where the various bills have been passed into law, or are being in the process of being passed into law. Under the GCREWS project, the project has hired an international, very experienced international consultant. And we currently have what we call a climate responsive tariff study underway. And the objective of that is to not just a case of, well, okay, how much could NAWASA increase water rates? But the climate responsive part of it is that we're going to look at what incentives could be built into a new tariff that would reward a high water consumer who conserves water and practices rainwater harvesting at one level, and what measures can we put in place to protect the most vulnerable. So that is currently on stream, but that is part of the GCREWS project. It remains to be seen what happens in terms of the functioning of the PERC and the setting of water rates.
Okay, great. We have another caller on the line. Caller, good evening, and thanks for holding. Good evening, caller.
Hello, good night.
Hi.
Yes, hello, good evening.
Go right ahead. Make your call short and strong.
My question is that with the new legislation that has been passed, and I think somewhere within that legislation there is a licensing requirement for persons to obtain for the use of water for certain purposes. There are some villages or some areas of the country where private water systems had been set up for use by the residents. I think areas such as Mongambi and probably one or two other areas. What effect will this licensing or this new legislation have on these systems, these small systems that persons privately set up?
Okay.
Residential consumption, none whatsoever.
Okay.
They will continue. However, there's a proviso. You will not be able to pollute. Where there's a stream or spring that others may use downstream, so that the Water Resources Management Unit, part of their responsibility is to ensure that there is a minimal amount of, or no, just wanton pollution of water sources. So the simple answer is for residential purposes. I think the Minister correctly touched on it a while ago. For subsistence farming also, backyard gardening, right, will not be impacted by the legislation that is in the process of being passed, the water bills.
Let's just divert a bit, Marion. GIZ, what about its future? Stay in Grenada? What's the future here?
Generally speaking, so first, we are not at the end yet from the GCREWS project. We still have a lot to do. This year is actually going to be a very industrious year, and I hope we'll see way more on the TV of the achievements. Last week we actually cut the first ribbon for the Tufton Hall water storage tank, and there are more to follow. So that's a very good achievement, and there are more milestones. For GIZ in general, we are a partner with Grenada, also not just in this water project, but also more in the regional portfolios, where Grenada plays a really strong role on e-mobility, electric vehicles, for example, but also in terms of renewable energies and so on. So we have a very strong partnership with the government of Grenada. I'm very proud of that. I've been here now many years and call Grenada my home now. So.
But how challenging has it been in terms of working with the locals and working with the local system? Did you find it seamless, or was it a challenging experience?
It's always a challenging experience, no matter where you work, because working change, what we call change management, or changing behavior, or working on changing administrative processes, always in some way or form a challenge, because we as humans, we don't like change per se. We're quite resistant to it. We need to see it working, so that's why when we do something, we try to demonstrate it. So even, for example, communal rainwater harvesting, something that we work now with NAWASA also in some of the areas. In a previous project, we worked with Blaze and installed a communal rainwater harvesting system. That's a community where we're so high elevated that at that time NAWASA didn't have water supply, and we thought it was a good solution. We learned a lot from that project, which informed right now the other projects. So demonstrating how it can be done, working on legislation, working on policy level, and constantly having that dialogue. That's also why we're here in Grenada, and we're working every day. So my team is here, we are here. So I would say it's really a partnership, and what I particularly like about the GCREWS project, that's not something that came from outside. It's really birthed in Grenada with a lot of dialogue, a lot of planning and data, and it's really a Grenadian, and also with some GIZ contribution, I won't deny that, but we were really jointly embarking on that and drafting and planning that with Grenada.
Okay, well, you know what, time has just run out, really. So we're going to take 20 seconds. I'm going to give each of you 20 seconds just to do a little bit of wrap-up, and let's see how we could bring the curtains down on this our program tonight. We're going to start to extreme left. Then, Mr. Smith, you go right ahead. 20 seconds.
The Water Resources Management Unit, the establishment and the related items of legislation has been long in coming. If this receives continued government support and support from all stakeholders and the nation as a whole, it will put us in the forefront of in the Caribbean region of water resources management, and it would assist us to tackle the water supply problems that we are having in Grenada now. As I say to my colleagues in NAWASA, the next generation and the one after that will thank this generation. I personally believe that the decision that was taken in the Parliament over the last couple of days is of huge significance. It's a big deal. We may not recognize it, many of us may not recognize it, because what we're trying to do here tonight, explain water resources management, is not a very easy task. But believe me, Pastor Worme, the next generation is going to thank this generation for doing it. Here's to a successful water resources management unit and improve watershed management in Grenada.
Great.
Thank you.
Well spoken. Marion?
I'm not sure if I can speak that well, but I will try. So I think the water resource management is necessary, because if you plan ahead and you make informed decision, you're actually ensuring that it's more just and fair, because at the end, someone will pay the bill. And if you're not making it fair and you don't do the proper planning, it's usually the people with the least income that have to foot climate change. So by working on a just and well-planned water resources management and water resources management plan, we can make it fairer for the next generation to come, and also for the people which have the least financial investment power to make their own decisions.
Minister.
Pastor, I am very happy to be part of a government, the NDC government, that is thinking ahead with a vision to improve systems, to improve the lives of the Grenadian people. So I'm very privileged to be part of this, and to, in particular, water, that is a scarce resource, to be able to think ahead and plan ahead and to set the right policies in place, because that's what we do. We examine our state of affairs and pass relevant legislation via the development of policies, of course, to ensure that the citizens are protected, our environment is protected, and that what we enjoy now can be safely handed to the next generation. So I'm very happy for that, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to share our perspective as a government with the rest of the Grenadian public. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank all three of you for coming here on your busy schedule and sharing and enlightening, of course, the entire nation. Well, folk, all of us got our role to play, whether it's the conservation of water, whatever, storage, and we also have to play our role in ensuring that we adapt to climate change and combat where necessary. It's been a pleasure this evening hosting this program. Until next week, Monday, God's willing, and I'll be filling in for Colin Dow another time. All the best. Have a very good evening. Thanks for joining.